And that's the most important thing I'll ever tell you about Darwin Shaw.
Well, welcome everyone. You missed this important thing about Darwin. You'll have to tune in later. I just wanted to say this. The first thing I knew about Darwin Shaw was his voice.
Mm.
And I had heard it on film, and I had never heard anything so soft and emotive and just caressing. It just felt like love. So his voice was the first thing that I heard before I saw any form. And I was fortunate enough to see him at the center years back, but I just always feel his voice and that caress that it contains. So we have Karen today, Talbot, to give us a little bio about Darwin's life, and Jeff and Damien are here to share some of their stories. I have a little video, so we're going to get started. Karen, Jay Baba.
Hey, Jay Baba. What I remember mostly about Darwin were those eyes, pools of love. And I'm going to talk about Darwin's life, and I'm going to ask anyone to, if there are any inaccuracies, to just let me know, because I would really appreciate that. But anyway, Darwin was born on July 20th, 1908 in Lake Luzerne, New York. His parents were Aaron and Helen Shaw. He had one brother who was 1 year older than he was. When Darwin was 2 years old, his family moved to Schenectady, New York, and they began attending the First English Lutheran Church services. When Darwin was 3 years old, he was baptized there. He remembers being surrounded by light, and he felt a strong sense of the spiritual presence. When Darwin was about 10 years old, he took violin lessons for about 3.5 years. His teacher was a Rosicrucian who told him about reincarnation. In July 1925, after his 17th birthday, Darwin hitchhiked to Wyoming with his 17-year-old cousin. They found jobs on cattle ranches, and he found the Western lifestyle conducive to his contemplative nature. He felt the presence of God within him. It was cold, so in the autumn of 1926, they left Wyoming, and he went to Hollywood, and there he was given a part as an extra in a movie. When he returned to Schenectady, he worked part-time for the city of Schenectady in the traffic division of the police department. But since he was off in the winters, he took courses in comparative religions. So there's a real thread of his interest in God and religion. In 1928, he met Jeanne Kitler. They married 7 years later. Darwin wrote of Jeanne, "As my wife, she was my dearest friend, my life companion, and fellow disciple of beloved Meher Baba." They had 3 children, Lowell, Renae, and Leatrice. In the spring of 1932, Darwin read an item in the local newspaper, the Schenectady Gazette, that Meher Baba was coming to America. The article aroused his interest. He had intuitively been feeling that the second coming of Christ would take place very soon. He would know about it and meet him. In 1932, Darwin found out that Meher Baba would be at the home in Harmon-on-Hudson, New York. But when he got there, Baba had already left. So what he did was write a letter to him. They mailed that letter, and partly through dinner, Darwin felt Baba replying to his letter. And he wrote, "His love was welling up through my heart center." In 1934, Baba went on his second world tour. So this time, Darwin and Jeanne drove to New York City, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. They did meet him, and here's what Darwin said about that meeting. I could not begin to tell you how we felt when Baba looked into our eyes, when he clasped our hands. I felt his hand clasp might have reached down through many centuries and many lifetimes. The first result of the impact of his love was a great sense of spiritual upliftment, joy, and happiness. There are probably other superlatives I could use, but none of them would be adequate to describe how he felt. This was our first glimpse into those infinite pools of divine love that were his eyes. I was overjoyed. His beauty, the sweetness of his love, which could not be expressed in words, the joy, the sparkling wonder of his being, one could not prefigure him. One could not imagine how it would be, what he would be like. He was more than one could imagine, immeasurably more. We get into the 1940s. In 1941, Elizabeth and Norina and Nadine returned from India and settle in an apartment in New York City. Norina begins to give speeches in their apartment and large halls in New York City. Norina was a speaker. Darwin and Jeanne would make periodic trips to attend the talks. Darwin would be the presenter. Norina had a special chair she used for these talks. It was a very heavy chair, and it's now in the barn at the Maher Center. But John Bass and Darwin would wait for large enough taxis that the chair would fit into. Elizabeth Patterson visited her father in Myrtle Beach to discuss the development of a Maher Spiritual Center there. She went down by train the very first time, and Darwin actually accompanied her on the train. It was on the second visit with Norina that they, in fact, saw the site for the Maher Center with Simeon Chapin, Elizabeth's father. In June 1944, Elizabeth, Norina, Darwin Shaw, and the Eaton family lived in Myrtle Beach to help assist with developing the Maher Center. In 1947, Baba called Elizabeth and Norina back to India. So Darwin and his family moved to Myrtle Beach to look after Yaupon Dunes, the house next door a while away, and the Maher Center property. Darwin was to supervise the building of the house for Maher Baba at the center and work on a mosquito abatement project there. He was given leave from his job in Schenectady. Darwin said this turned out to be one of the happiest years of their lives. When Elizabeth and Norina returned to Yaupon Dunes in September 1949, Darwin and his family returned to their 2 Castine Street home in Schenectady, that time in mid-September. Throughout the 40s, Darwin felt an inner connection to Baba while he worked diligently to prepare the center for his visit. He held weekly meetings at his home in Schenectady, occasionally spoke in New York City about Baba. Since meeting Baba in 1934 in December, the Shaws did not see Baba again until 1952, but they remained faithful and in communication all those years. On May 10th, 1952, the family saw Baba once again. They were thrilled. They stayed through the 18th of May, and after being home for a few days, they found out about the horrible accident in Prague, Oklahoma. Baba asked the Shaw family to come to New York in July. They drove to Scarsdale and had an interview with Baba. Darwin spent the next 10 days at the Winterfeld's apartment in New York, but he would go daily to Scarsdale. He also went with Baba on their trip to the Bronx Zoo, and on one dental appointment in Manhattan for Baba, Darwin found the two of them alone. So he was alone, just him and Baba. In 1954, Darwin's wish to be able to travel to India occurred. He was one of the 19 men from 3 countries that attended the 3 incredible weeks, September 10th through the 30th. Darwin brought a white scarf for Baba. He felt it inadequate. Humbly, he gave it to Baba, who said to him, "You yourself are the greatest gift you could have brought. You are God's gift to me." On September 12th, they attended the darshan at Wadia Park in Ahmednagar. The rest of that week, they were given tours of Mehrabad, private interviews, and then a tour of Merazad. Second week, Baba gave many discourses. And on November 18th, he explained something that I think a number of you may do to this day. He explained the practice that Darwin embraced. Dress your soul with Meher Baba 4 times during the day, morning, noon, 5 p.m., and when you retire, just 1 second is all was needed. On the 20th, they went with Baba to Sukori. And on the 23rd, Darwin wrote 2 verses, and I'll read them later as the time permits, that later became known as the Song of the Wind. The 3rd week, there were lots of talks, went to Arangown, and the 29th and 30th were significant days because there was a long-awaited meeting at Lower Mehrabad with the Easterners and Western men, and Baba gave the final declaration. In 1956, the family accompanied Baba on his trip to America to New York, the Delmonico, Myrtle Beach, Maher Mount, Hollywood, and California. So that was quite a time for them. Jeanne had the pleasure of doing Baba's laundry at certain times during the trip. 1958, they also visited the Maher Spiritual Center, and that was another opportunity. 1962, they attended in November the East-West Gathering, and at that time, Baba had Darwin read out a number of speeches in English, My Dear Workers, My Dear Children, and others. They had a private interview, and Baba said to Darwin, "It is because of your love for me that I chose you to read out my messages at the gathering." When it was over, they went back to the hotel, and Jeanne wasn't feeling that well. So they ended up being called by Baba. They had a surprise meeting. They were able to see him briefly at Bunn Gardens. And as Darwin said, it turned out to be one of the most beautiful times they ever had with him. And in fact, it was the very last time that they would see Baba. In the 60s, Darwin gave talks. Woodstock, with Rick Chapman, and then in the West. In 1969, when Baba dropped his body, Darwin received a cable from Adi and Elizabeth after the 31st, when they were planning the Great Darshan, asking him to be one of the group leaders of the chartered flight from Myrtle Beach. When they arrived in Bombay, Darwin told the reporters they kept their appointment with Baba, and Baba kept his appointment with them. It was the very first time that Darwin saw Mera, and after that, Darwin and Jeanne had their continuous meetings, which were the longest held meetings in the United States, at Saturday night at their home on 2 Castine Street. People like Jeff Wolverton and others moved to the Schenectady area to be near Darwin. And then in 1989, Darwin and Jeanne moved to Little River, South Carolina, to live near the Maher Center. Jeanne passed away on June 26, 1995, and Darwin passed away on October 2nd, 2005 in Asheville, North Carolina, after giving every bit of himself to us in sharing Baba's love. So 2 books, and I know Jeff and others have really poured over Effort and Grace, and a lifetime of companionship with Meher Baba as only God can love. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Jai Baba, everyone. And thank you for listening.
Jay Baba, Karen, that was great as always. You just bring it all right to us.
Wow,
It's
very
powerful, Karen. It was powerful to hear. I've never quite heard his whole biography strung together, and it was very powerful. Wow.
Yeah.
You know what's so beautiful is Ken Rickstead has a CD of songs that weave
Yeah.
Baba's life.
Yeah. Even one devoted to 2 Castine Street,
That's right.
where we used to. Wow, that was very touching. Boy, I had to fight back the tears.
Thank you.
Now, if you'd like to pick up here, we can do that. I've also got like a 5-minute video of some photos of Darwin with some music, but I can wait until you guys are done if you'd like.
Well, maybe I'll chime in here because I've got to go back to work, and Damien is permanently retired and he just sits back. The
Semi-retired.
nearest sofa is what he's looking for. No. I'll just some of the things that.
Damien.
Alan,
Damien.
Alan, what are you doing?
What's that?
Saying Damien.
Okay, and please don't.
Alan is trying to say hello.
Alan, please go away.
It's okay.
Alan, go back in the
Unacceptable.
corner
What's wrong with
and
you?
Hi, Alan.
have a
I
time.
love you, Alan.
Say hello to Damien.
I was just going to add a few things that I recall in his biography. One is that early on, he had the experience of Jesus's companionship when he was growing up, and he kind of he thought everybody else had the same experience because they were going to church, but actually they just believed in Jesus. He had the experience. And so, and then when he went out west, worked as a cowboy on these ranches under these huge skies, he was contemplative. He felt Jesus's presence. And I think it was one evening he realized that Christ is on the earth again and that he would meet him. And sure enough, I think he even knew the year, that he would. But one thing that I remember, when Bob was brought over to meet Darwin and Jeanne in this hotel lobby by Narina, and Narina introduced, this is Darwin and Jeanne Shaw, Baba reached out his hand toward Darwin, and he would say that hand came across 2,000 years. And it was like reliving the pages of the New Testament. I remember he was saying that. Let me see if I can think of anything in his biography. There was a beautiful thing that happened when during that period in 1949 or 48 it was, when he was here in Myrtle Beach. He was helped with engineers to get the swamps kind of drained out of here so you could come from Highway 17 into the center. Previously, you had to go either at low tide or some back road. But at the end of each day, he would go, a work day, he would go over to where Baba's house was to be built. It was laid out, just staked out. And he would go to a certain place on the bluff facing India and think of Baba. And he, at the end of each day, and he would feel Baba's presence. And he really didn't doubt it, but you kind of wonder, is this really, am I really feeling Baba's presence? So then, 4 years later when Baba came, this is 1952, Baba asked the Shaw family over and so they came over by car, and when they got there, Baba was at the screen door of his house, and he opened the screen door, and the 3 kids, the teenage kids and Jeanne went up past Baba, and Darwin was the last one. And as he was coming up the steps, Baba went like this and pointed to that place. On the bluff. And Darwin said, Baba,
You remember,
you remind me
You're-
how I used to come here and think of you.
and Baba just shook his head.
Yeah, he just kind of went like that. So all those like internal moments we have with Bob are more real and not imaginary like we think. And the one thing that, let's see if I can, just to say briefly, my contact, Ken Rickstead and I were just traveling around the center visiting college buddies. And we looked on the map and it was kind of near Schenectady, New York. So we thought, there's some elderly couple here that had met Baba back in the 30s. And we pulled off to the side of the road one day and decided to look up the Darwin Jeanne Shaw, and I got cold feet. I just like, they don't know us from Adam. We're just like a couple of young people. This is back in probably 69 or 70. But Ken did. He called and they invited us right over. And we spent about 3.5 hours
Wow.
at their place, hearing these firsthand stories. I mean, it was very hard to get firsthand stories of Baba. Here, their stories went back to the 30s, of course. And as we were leaving, Ken and I thought, well, we don't have any particular place to go. Why don't we just put our suitcases down here? And the next thing you know, we were living in Schenectady, and Darwin got us some jobs at the local nursing home, and we started our life there. And the one thing I want to mention is that, you know, Baba talked about the inner life, and we had read all the discourses and everything. But through Darwin, I mean, I just thought the new life, the inner life would just kind of develop on its own. I would just kind of go on living my life, and the inner life would take care of itself. But through Darwin really emphasized you can be proactive. You don't have to just take whatever comes each day. So like Darwin would talk about, you know, when you wake up in the morning, it's like being on a railway platform, you know, and don't take the first train going out. You might wind up in Newark, New Jersey. You know, spend time with Baba, get centered on Baba, so that when you start your day, you've chosen the train that you want to carry you through the day. You know, so that, I mean, there were so many things, especially in the book Effort and Grace, that gives so many hints about the inner life that we can be proactive about, and don't just let it, leave it up to Baba to unfold it. We can be actively in the process. Here's one other thing, and then I'll let Damien come in. Well, we're down to 15%.
Can we plug in?
No, the
Okay.
cord is in
It's okay.
So here, one day after a meeting, this is back in around 1970, Jeanne would serve apple juice and cookies. And so we're standing around after the meeting, and Darwin, who was very unassuming, he was the perfect guy for the West, because he wasn't a fire and brimstone person. He put stuff out there. You could take it or leave it. He was very laid back. But he looked at me just kind of blandly and he said, Jeff, see. Oh, shoot. Let's see. Let me get this. You are not the personality self. He did, you know, and I thought, inside, I thought, that's not me. I thought the whole purpose was to get to know me more and more deeply and go on and improving me until I reach the goal. And here he's saying I'm basically barking up the wrong tree. I had no place to put that, but I did file it away, knowing that someday it'll become real to me, you know. But he would say the personality self is just a storefront for the soul. And we make such a big deal of changing the window displays to suit the seasons and everything, when we could go inside and enjoy the priceless merchandise within. So that turned my a whole approach on an entirely different direction. That what I was looking for is not in this personality self, but it's much deeper. So I got that. He would do these little tweaks, you know. Well, I'll just say one last thing. Here's how he described me back in those days. He said, Jeff, here's the goal. And here's you. Yeah. Yeah. Over, I was so intense, I was overdoing everything. So he kind of, with his very moderate kind of mellow personality, kind of toned me down. So I'm acceptable at my age now. Okay, so Damien.
Wow.
Oh, Jeff, thank you. That was
Yeah.
great. Hey,
Wow.
Dave.
I mean, I guess there's so much, and it's so powerful when I think of Darwin and Jeanne also. Um, I think that when he met, he met Baba in 1932. He never said, he got there maybe 2 or 3 hours after Bob had gone on to California, but he never ever said, I missed him. He always said, I found him. Because when he walked into Harmon and Hudson, Baba's presence was so strong in the whole house that he knew he had found Baba. And Anne Ross's mother, Josephine, said, would you like to write a letter? He wrote the letter, and they came back for dinner. And then Baba started to answer that letter
Sentence by sentence.
sentence by point, because Darwin had poured out his life to Baba and dedicated his life to Baba. And Baba said, yes, I recognize you. You've been with me many times before. And yes, I accept your offer of your life. And very specific point by point. Of course, he started to cry. They were sitting down for the evening meal, and Bob was speaking to him. So he started to cry. And then everyone at the table, Elizabeth and Josephine and Narina, everyone else started to cry. And he said that was the end of the meal. So that was the beginning. And the other powerful thing, we were very lucky we knew him well in Schenectady, but then when he came down here, we missed him. And fortunately, I was able to move down here, and we were very lucky to be with Darwin and Jeanne for many, many years down here and help them as they got older. And so much of the stuff, like Jeff said, it was like one time I gave him a ride to the discourse meeting, and I said to him, we'd become close, easy friends. And I said, Darwin, you're like a mentor to me, but you're also my friend. And he just very simply said, well, it goes both ways. And just that simple love. And I'm trying to think. Anyway, there was so much. The important thing that maybe about, I don't know, 5 years before he passed away in 2005, he started sharing with us that something that kind of, it just hit him recently. And he said, for 18 long years, I had met Baba, but I couldn't see him. And all my friends were in India with him, and Jeanne and I were here, and our job was to raise our kids and to hold the fort here. And so it was very hard and very painful. And I felt like it was a loss, he said, or a difficulty. And for many, many years, I had to just work with that loss of not seeing Baba for 18 long years. He says, but now recently it's come to me, it feels like it was a great gift that Baba gave to us, that because we had to focus on our inner connection with Baba. And so instead of it being a loss, now we had for 18 years, I had developed an interconnection with Baba that was very solid. So that became not a loss, but a great gift that Baba had given. And I think that it's also all of the stuff, like Jeff said, that he shared with us was subtle ways of him guiding us in a very, very subtle way. These little things that he would say. And Jeanne also, she was a hidden yogi. I mean, they were one, they were, as we knew them, they were one. And one time I was riding in the car going up to, him to library, and we got out of the car and I didn't want to slam the door. So I just sort of closed it, but not strong enough. So it didn't close. So Jeanne opened the door again and then closed it. And she just said, the trick is in letting go. These little things that they shared with us.
She had great intuition. Yeah. Baba said that she'd been an angel, so this was a physically rough life for her, but she had a knowing and a certain timeless place that you could see a certain timeless look on her face it was like looking through a window in the world of time and space into something eternal. She had that. Behind that fuddy-duddy old lady with the black wig. I used to call him Clark Kent. I don't know. I mean, Michal, I don't know if you know Clark, Superman, but Clark Kent was the mild-mannered reporter working for a great metropolitan newspaper. He was like, you could completely overlook him, but whenever Darwin started talking about Baba, then the shirt came off there, and that would come out. I mean, he could channel Baba. I mean, he used to say, don't think of yourself as a base of operations, think of yourself as a conduit or a vehicle. It's an entirely different paradigm than what most people in the world are living in. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure other people have things to say.
Yeah, it's good to hear from everybody in any group sharing. It's always great to hear from everyone, if possible.
Well, I'm so grateful you guys could show, because you have kind of that firsthand touch. Yeah, I'll just say this. The first time I saw Darwin, as I said, the first thing I remember is his voice, and it just held a space in my heart. There was just something in that voice. But I was coming at the center, I was walking around the path, and I was coming past the guest house. And just as I got to the fence where the guest house starts, I saw this man with one foot into the bushes. And on the vine, there was a cardinal.
Mm.
And the two of them were having this incredible interaction. And I stepped into it. I didn't mean to, but it was just that my next foot and I was there. And there was Darwin with his cardinal having this wonderful time. And he just turned around with that soft look and smile and voice. And I don't know, I was so nervous. I think I probably just said, oh, Che Baba, Darwin, if I even could say his name, because I was so nervous. But it was just like I encountered something that I shouldn't have been in, but I'm so glad I was. So anyway, that was my first take. And then, as you brought up, Damien, all those discourse meetings that Darwin led at the center, and I was so fortunate to have been at a number of them. Not as many as you guys, for sure, but a couple of them. And there was just no way to explain that. I didn't have any point of reference. I think that, it was wonderful. I always had Kitty and Elizabeth and Jane, but there was only really, for me, one Eastern or Western man of Mare Baba's, and that was Darwin.
Mm.
And he was Baba's man. And so, all the young men that surrounded him or spent time in the discourse meetings or whatever, it was Darwin who mentored so many. He was such an amazing example for us. So anyway, that's what
No, she's good. Oh, he's also.
yeah.
Oh,
So
You
John,
got your hand up.
whose hands up?
Your
Karen.
hand is up.
Go ahead, Karen.
Karen, but
Karen-
Karen, we haven't learned lip reading yet, but we're getting a lot of
It's
practice.
Karen and John with their,
And John too.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Jeff, if you, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff, if you have 1 minute more, can you just explain how you started the gathering at Albany State where Darwin spoke? How
Yeah.
that came to be?
Yeah, a lot of people came to Baba on this
I
night.
did.
And you did. I mean, there must be about 40 people who, but here's what happened. It was advertised that Darwin was going to give a talk at the SUNY, in Albany.
And you advertised it.
Was that?
You and Ken advertised
Yeah,
it?
and Barbara and everything. And it was just around Halloween. So people were actually cutting out Baba's face on this poster and using it for a Halloween mask. I mean, it was but anyway, there were posters all over, and the gathering was going to be in this a courtyard surrounded by buildings, classrooms. And so what happened is that we got there, and we were kind of about to begin, and then there was a bomb threat, a bomb scare. So everybody in all these classrooms were kind of herded into the courtyard. I mean, hundreds of them. And we were kind of waiting around to what was going to happen, And at a certain point, Jeanne said, you're standing around. We had to kind of stand around. It wasn't like there were a lot of benches. So Jeanne pointed up the stair. There was a staircase that went up in the middle of the courtyard to the second floor. And so Darwin and Jeanne, they started walking up the steps. Now, Darwin had a blue suit on and everything, so he looked like he might be a university official. So he goes up there, and we go up into this lounge, this large lounge, and I mean, maybe 150 or 200 people actually assemble there.
Wow.
And Darwin gets up, and he says something like this. I wish I could remember the wording, but he said, in this world of, of upheaval and stress and wars, who would have thought that someone of the stature of Jesus would come to this world again? Some pin drop silence, because people were kind of expecting that he might be like a university official telling them what to do next. But instead, they all heard about Baba. And I mean, I tell you, there were so many people, like, say, Karen and Michael Siegel. And, I mean, there were a whole many people, a lot of people. Jane Turner Brown. I mean, a bunch of, not Jane, the Bob Brown's first wife. A great many people were there, and that's when they first heard of Baba powerfully, because many of them became lifelong Baba lovers. So that was does that make sense? I mean, that what you were asking, Karen?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, it was really, yeah, perfect. Bomb.
John had his hand up, but he's put it down. I don't know if he's still.
Let me say one last thing, and then I
There's
got to
John.
go.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, and then just because this tells you a little bit about Darwin. Darwin was about 95 or 96, and he was in the refectory. And this thing flashed to me, something to say to him. I said, Darwin, you have a lot of rare wine in your cellar. And if you die, it's just going to go to your relatives. I think we should bring it up now. You've been with Baba for the last 70 years, focusing on him year in and year out, month by month, day in and day out. What is your experience now? Now, he would not normally say where he was coming from. You had to kind of read between the lines. But somehow that approach got, tickled him. So he actually came out with this, and he said, and I remembered it quite clearly, just as you breathe in and out all day, and you don't say, now it's time to inhale, now it's time to exhale, eventually life just unfolds. And you're not trying to get things to go this way or that way, meaning you're not micromanaging your life. So he says, consciousness is freed up at the level of the world. It goes up to the level of the spirit and out to the far corners of the universe, and you live in and through everyone. So, man, I looked over at this wizened old gentleman. What? But he's kind of everywhere. I mean, his consciousness was released from being cramped in this old man, and it's out there romping over the whole universe. So that was the one time he kind of revealed to me where he was really at. Yeah. Anyway, I got to go.
Oh,
Thank you for
I'll bring
that opportunity.
your.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jeff.
we're down to
Thank you,
9%.
Damon.
down to 9%.
I'll
Say
bring
Bob.
it to you, Jeff. I'll find
All
where you.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I wanted to amplify what you said, Ruthie, about Darwin in the reading room. I know that when I used to read the discourses myself, what was in there, like the qualifications of the aspirant and all that, they seemed absolutely impossible. And there were lots of parts of the discourses that I didn't really understand. When I went to the reading room and Darwin was reading, and we had one of those sessions, everything made sense. He was able to take the discourses, and in that discourse meeting, give it a perspective that we could relate to. And it didn't seem so unreachable then in its simplicity. And I also wanted to just mention about Darwin's comment about being a conduit. He himself was an amazing conduit. And what happened to did my video go off?
It's stuck.
Yeah, you're frozen, but
Keep-
we are
You're
hearing
still
you.
there, John. Oh, now it went off.
You-
There you
There we
are.
go.
There you are.
Yeah, so anyway, I have this story in the book I've been working on for a very long time called His Brilliant Light, Stories of Mayor Baba and His Close Ones. And that starts with my first visit to the center when I walked into the original kitchen. And there was this unassuming man there who was very gently speaking with a few people gathered around him. And all of a sudden, out of this man just came forth like a volcano of light. And it was very blissful light. And it filled me up and spilled out all over the whole center and as far as I could see. And it was Darwin. I mean, he had transformed the center as a conduit for Baba's life, Baba's light. And I was just totally overwhelmed by that. And that was the moment that I became a Baba lover. I remember thinking, if this man is just one of Baba's disciples or lovers, and he has this amazing ability to channel Baba's blissful light, that was, by the way, as intense as thousands of stars. Just imagine what Baba himself could be like or would be like. And, and then finding out, meeting some of the Mandali, that they had experiences of Baba's light, glimpses of his light, kind of reconfirmed that. But I remember that Darwin's body just kind of disappeared, and it was just this light pouring out. And I was curious at that point about, before that moment, about Meher Baba. But after that moment, it was like, how can I not love this man for the rest of my life? And how can I not do everything I can to share this moment with other people? So anyway, there it is, Darwin as a channel for Baba's light.
Was that the first time you met Darwin?
Yeah, I didn't even know who he was.
Wow. Wow.
I didn't know anything about, the only thing I knew was I had seen a poster in the University of Vermont Student Union, the ancient one, and it said, Baba looked like Jesus, and it said, I was Jesus, I was Buddha, I was this one, I was that one, and now I'm Meher Baba. And I thought that was a pretty outrageous claim. And then a thought came to me, what happens if what he is claiming is really true? I need to go and find out. So I went to the center and I met Kitty and Elizabeth for the first time there, but I didn't know anyone. I just went, and I was like a moth to a flame. And when I walked into the original kitchen, I had no idea who this man was. And he just turned into this incredible light as a channel from Baba. And it just changed my life completely. And, blissfully so much for the better.
What year was that?
That was in 1971.
Thank you.
I remember also telling Jeanne this story years later. And Jeanne said, yeah, I've heard that about Darwin from a number of people, but to me, he's just my husband that takes out the garbage every day.
I heard that about Darwin.
Thank you, John. That's great. Wow. Susan, Che Baba.
What happened here?
Nothing.
Oh,
I apologize for the lack of video, but I'm in no state to be seen, trust me.
Okay.
I'm jealous of the people who spent all those years, with Darwin, but I have a couple of small stories that I would like to share. So it was 1979. I was living in Berkeley, in a studio in Berkeley, and most of my friends were not Baba lovers. And I was having a friend over for dinner, and we were both at that time writers and feminists, intellectuals, and I was embarrassed to have this. I had a big picture of Baba in my apartment, and I was embarrassed about having this big, strange man's face on the wall. So I took down Baba's picture. Then I felt really terrible. I felt really guilty. And I decided to compromise by putting up a smaller picture in some discreet corner. And that's what I did. I had my friend over for dinner. I don't even remember what her name was at this point. But I don't remember what happened at the dinner. But sometime after that, not long after that, there was the LA Sahabas, and in the mountains west of LA. And I went to the Sahabas, and Darwin was there. And me being me, who feels like I always have to be honest, I felt like I had to tell Darwin what happened. So I said to Darwin, I said, "Oh, Darwin, I'm such a hypocrite. I say I'm a Baba lover, then I have a friend over for dinner and I take down Baba's picture." And Darwin looked at me and he said, with a twinkle in his eye, he said, "Well, that's okay. You could leave up a littler picture, and if she's drawn to Baba, she'll be drawn to Baba." And I didn't tell him about leaving up the smaller picture. So, so what I got from that was that, one, either Darwin knew everything or he was an amazing channel of Baba. Two, that Baba was always with me. And three, that Baba accepts me with all of my very, very convoluted contradictions. And another one that actually was that changed my life was that I was living on the West Coast in Berkeley for many years, and often every year or two, I would go to New York, I would visit my mother, and then I would come down to the Baba Center and then go back to California. And so there was a time when this happened. I had just seen my mother in New York. And also I had just graduated from graduate school in the Bay Area. And I ran into Darwin on the center. And so he said, "How are you?" Well, the way he does. So I was telling him how I got my master's degree and what I was going to do with my life, et cetera, et cetera. And he kept interrupting me and saying, "Oh, you live on the West Coast and your mother lives on the East Coast, isn't that right?" And I said, "Yes, yes." And then I would go on with my trying to get his attention about my life, and he would keep interrupting me and saying this. And when I went back to California, within a couple of months, my mother was diagnosed with cancer. And of course, I remember what Darwin said. It still took me a whole bunch of months to figure out that I needed to go back to New York. Anyway, those are my two stories that I wanted to share today. Thank you.
Those are beautiful stories, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Someone has a hand up there.
That's Miss Judy.
Hey, Judy.
Jai Baba, Judy.
Hey, Baba, everyone. And what a wonderful occasion. Darwin's birthday. Can anybody think of Darwin for a moment without smiling, without being delighted with the presence of Mayor Baba that just radiated through him? That was my experience every time I was ever with him, was that he radiated Baba. And I was a latecomer in meeting Darwin compared to the stories we've been sharing. I first met Darwin at Sahavas in Pender Island, which is an island off Vancouver, BC. I'm a West Coast kid and live in Seattle. So I had gone up, as did a whole lot of our Baba group. I mean, everybody came up because Darwin was there. And we all camped out on craggy rocks, and it was an unusual, I felt like I had to be a mountain goat to get to where my tent was. But at any rate, Darwin was there. And again, it's like, I don't exactly have a story. The moment I met him and he embraced me, I felt like I was being embraced by Mayor Baba, which I didn't have the good fortune in this body to have, but I knew it when I felt it. And he, as has been being shared, it's like whatever everything was fine with Darwin. Everything was accepted. He was so much like Baba in the sense of being this ocean that just had the presence of God. And after that, I had many fortunate opportunities to be with him. And there was a period after I came back from living at Maribod for some years that Baba allowed me, really till COVID started, to come each year to Myrtle Beach. And as long as Darwin was still with us, Jeff and I would take him out to lunch at least once each time I was there, and just be with him, just bask in that presence of Baba that radiated naturally around him because of his love, because of Baba's love. And it's only been Baba's close Eastern and Western Mandali that I've felt that same presence of Baba with. But he had a unique way of, it was so calm, it was so embracing, it was so simple. And it was him, the capital H, which I mean Baba, that I received, and I have a hunch each of us that had a chance to be with him, that's what it somehow, he just channeled Baba. Jai Baba.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Thank you, Judy. I wonder if I could just take a moment, and this is probably about a 5-minute video, but I'd love to share this
Sure.
just because it's so good to see his face again. So let's see. Here we go. Let me get rid of our people here.
A young Darwin, younger than any of us could have seen.
promising never, never to part, promising never, never to part. What moments divine, what moments divine. Two clouds came along, two clouds came along. Don't let them begin, no begin. Let the love that was once a fire remain an ember. Let it sleep like the dead desire I only remember. Let it sleep like the dead desire I only remember. When they begin, they'll begin. Make them play, make them play, make them play, make them play. To the stars that were there before, return above you. Until you whisper to me once more, darling, I love you. Darling, I love you. Darling, I love you. And we suddenly know what heaven we're in. What moments divine. When they begin. What heaven we're in. When they begin, they'll begin. It brings back a memory, evergreen. It brings back a memory, evergreen. It brings back a memory, evergreen.
That was beautiful, Lucy.
Oh,
Wow.
fantastic. Wow.
You're muted, darling. Still muted.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I was just trying to get out of the share place there. Sorry.
Yeah, it was
Jay.
beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous.
It was really funny. I thought I had a video that we made in the past, Karen, but I did not. So I started pulling pictures, and even before I pulled the pictures, I was trying to think of the song, and the only thing I could think was "Begin the Begin." And then my husband said to me, I said, "Yeah, well, I have tried to think of a song." He said, "Well, "Begin the Begin" is the only thing I can think of."
No? Okay.
And so both of us kind of agreed. Our hearts were just saying that. And anyway, I think that the Divine Maggies did a divine job on their rendition. So it was
Yeah, what a rendition. Amazing.
Great rendition. Wow.
Ruthie, Karen mentioned, and maybe she could read the words that Darwin wrote about the wind.
Song of the
And
Wind. Yeah.
I know that Jeff is, he's on a recording someplace singing that.
Yeah, Joe
Joe
Stewart.
Stewart. Yeah, Joe Stewart put the music to it.
Yeah,
Karen, you muted as well.
it's okay. It takes a minute.
You still muted,
Okay,
darling.
can you hear me now? Okay,
Got it.
okay, so after being lovingly embraced by Baba, he was sitting, this was at the this was at the 3 Incredible Weeks. I felt that I must try to capture on paper this precious experience with Baba, his redeeming, awakening divine love. It was then that I wrote the 2 verses that later became known as the Song of the Wind or Wind Song. I wrote, "Let the song of the wind ever remind you of my love. Let its soul healing balm sigh through your being wherever you are. And know that I have loved you as only God can love. And be sure that I will love you thus throughout eternity. Know, beloved, that you are mine forever, that I have called you from the realm of illusion to caress you with love divine." Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Beautiful. Thank you. Susan?
During that beautiful slideshow, I remembered one other thing that Darwin, I keep calling him Bob. I remembered one other thing that Darwin said to me that I would like to share for posterity. I don't remember the context, what we were talking about, but I remember him saying this. He said, "You learn that your worst fear," he said, "your worst fear comes true, but it's okay." No, wait, I'm getting it mixed up. He said, "You learn that your worst fear, that you don't exist, is true, but it's okay." You learn that your worst fear, that you don't exist, is true, but it's okay.
That's a good one.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay. Thank you.
What's really hitting me is, as the years have gone on and listening to you all, that it feels like Darwin is growing in terms of the effect that he's had on people, and he's even a bigger soul that I knew. And he's, I'd say, of all the Western of all the Western disciples, he seemed to have been able to talk about the inner life and share about the inner life more than any other ones I know. But each one, of course, Margaret, Elizabeth, Kitty, they all gave so much. But Darwin really, somehow his presence seems to be growing over the years. And it's a miracle that we had the information that became Effort and Grace. He was Marshall had just gone to India and was very inspired. And I was walking with Darwin up to Baba's house, and we were sitting on the porch, and Marshall very strongly said, Darwin did not like to get recorded, whether it's video or audio, did not like it, because he wanted to be kind of in the moment. But Marshall said, Darwin, this is maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years before he passed or so. And he says, Darwin, we've got to record you. And to my surprise, Darwin said, okay. And then he said, I'm sure Damien could help recording. And I said, sure. And so we went to record him. I got a good tape recorder, and this was during a discourse meeting. And we're all ready to go. And so Summer said something like, well, can we turn the recorder on? And Darwin goes, I don't know about that. And so Summer kind of pulled a fast one and said, like, well, Damien went to all this work to get the recorder. He agreed reluctantly. And that went on like that for a couple times. And then the third time, I was waiting for Darwin to give the okay. And I'm just waiting there. And Darwin said, well, aren't you going to turn it on? And then I knew we were good to go. And then we had 44 recordings. And those are, Darwin got a copy, the center got a copy, but I would love for those to be shared, because like we've said before, something in Darwin's voice, no wonder Baba had him read out at the East-West gathering. There was and like Judy said very powerfully, there was something that came through his voice that was the essence of who he was, and was the essence of who Baba is. It somehow came through that voice. So I would love for us to have those recordings. And then we took every little time we went to a restaurant, people would be shutting up and trying to be quiet, get Darwin to talk, and people would be writing down these little words of wisdom he shared, or at his kitchen table. And then a lot of it was from those recordings. We had him speaking extemporaneously about the discourses.
Damien, where are the recordings?
Where are they?
Yeah.
They're number one, there was 2 copies made. One went to Darwin, and one went to because it was the center, went to the center. And so I assume they're at the archives of the center. And then when Darwin was moved to Asheville, that, eventually that stuff, when the house disbanded, then Sherry got the recordings that were carefully shared in their storeroom. So I hope, we'd have to ask Sherry, but, I assume they probably will go to the MAC archives eventually, if they're not already there. So there's 2 sets of recordings, about 44 of them.
Wow.
So if anybody would like to ask, Sherry, that would be a good thing to do, I'd say.
What's your last name?
Keller.
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 Okay. Thank you.
That would be great to track that down, because they're invaluable. And yeah, these are gems.
They need to be, one copy needs to be where the Baba world, for the folks that come after us and so forth, have access to that. And, not that it's just hidden away in someone's personal collection or whatever. It needs to.
100% needs to be
Yeah.
shared with, these are unbelievably valuable. And you could just put them on while you're going through your day. He's speaking about the discourses, but his voice is reading the discourses, and then he speaks extemporaneously about the discourses.
So cool.
100% correct, Judy, these are too valuable. I mean, we're lucky to be with these people that we're with. Mayor Baba. I mean, there's so many people won't have this. I mean, we're getting up there. There's so many people who won't. I mean, we're talking thousands of years. They won't have what we have, and so.
Oh dear, we lost him.
I think the power went out. He said he only had so much power left, and I thought he had plugged in. I saw him moving around. So he may be back.
John, would you be willing to follow up on contacting Sherry Kitler and seeing if you can get these into a Baba accessible archives?
Sure, Judy. The thing is, does anybody have her contact information? Because I don't. That's the key.
I bet the Gateway has it.
Uh-huh. Okay. And how do you know, Judy, how she got the recordings to begin with?
She is Darwin's granddaughter.
Right.
She's Leatrice's daughter, and she married Mark Keller. That spent time over at Maribod. He worked closely with Walnut too during some of the years that I was there. So yeah, she's family, and but can we get a good copy if the family wants to keep them into either Mayher Archives or the center, the Myrtle Beach Center.
It sounds like the center already has a copy. That's another.
The center does. That's what he said. The center has a copy and Sherry has a copy. So, you could go through the center and ask them if there's a way they could put that up on their web page, because they have a lot of accessible things now on their web page that up until now haven't been. And they're working extensively on that web page. I know that. So that's the route I might take, would be to get in touch with the librarian at the center, Susan. I can't think of her last name. I want to say McDonald, and go through her, because she has the chain to be able to get there.
If I'm not mistaken, then a few months back, there was a Zoom with Mac where they received things from the Darwin Shaw family. If I'm not mistaken, there was a Zoom. So Mac could be also asked if they have anything.
Right.
But
So McCall, you're under the impression that those recordings went to Mac already? Is that right?
I'm not saying that the recordings were sent, but if I remember right, if I'm not mistaken, then they had the share of the Darwin Shaw's treasures, and they put it up. So they might know something about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Ruthie, that's an excellent suggestion you made. The best way that would be most available to everybody is for the center to get it up on their site. And then any of us that are interested, or anybody in the future, will be able to access it freely.
Right. And I think that's their goal with their webpage, is to make things easy to find and accessible. So yeah, that would be one of the things to ask Susan. All right. Well, is there anybody that would like to share anything else about Darwin before we wrap this up?
I just have one other story, Ruthie.
Oh, good.
And that is that I had, as you can imagine, been wanting to keep in touch with Darwin the best I could after I found out who he was. And so Deborah and I would drive 6 or 7 hours to his meetings in Schenectady. And when the meetings were over, we turn around and drive back home, or occasionally we'd stay overnight with Bill Cliff or someone else. But anyway, so every time I visited the center, or Deborah and I visited the center, we wanted to see Darwin. So late in his life, he was in his 90s, I called up, and I don't remember whether it was Damien or someone was there with him. Maybe it was Richie. And I said, well, you know, this is John Meyer. I'm coming to the center. And usually when I come to the center, I say hello to Darwin, have a chat with him. And they said, well, sorry, Darwin is just not doing well, and he's really not able to see anyone. So I said, well, okay, then please just give him the message that I'm on the center. So they said, okay, we'll do that. So if you remember Darwin when he was in his last years, he really was not doing well. He still, physically, he still had all of the beautiful love pouring out of him from Baba, but physically he wasn't doing well. So on my stay on the center, I went into the reading room, and I was there by myself, you know, reading some things. The main Ruba library was closed, so I was just in the reading room reading alone. And the door opens up, and in walks Darwin. And I said, Darwin, wow, I'm so amazed to see you here. I thought you weren't feeling well and that you were not seeing people. And he said, well, John, I got the message that you wanted to see me. So
Amazing.
I made it a point to come here and see you. We had a nice conversation, and he went back home. I don't know how he got there, but that's how self-effacing and how giving he was, because he knew I wanted to see him. Who knows what kind of struggle he went through to get to the center and then to the reading room, but he did that. And that is just such a beautiful memory of the man.
And how he knew that you were in the reading room in the
Well,
first
he
place.
must have asked to find out. I don't know that. He knew I was on the center, and but how he knew, you know, who knows? Maybe he just knew. Who knows?
I think he just knew.
That's a touching story. Very touching. Thank you.
Yeah, I can remember going to one of the local Dock in the Boxes at Myrtle Beach. I was there. I don't even know who I was with. I don't even know why we had to go, but we had to go see a doctor, you know, one of those emergent centers. And we went in and sat down, and who's there but Darwin and Jeanne. And I think Jeanne was not feeling well. But I think my experience of that, it was such an amazing, it was like, you know, Baba's blessing to be sitting in this emergence center with Jeanne and Darwin. And I think my takeaway from that was they were not a bit interested in telling what was going on, why they were there. They wanted to know why we were there. And were we going to be all right? And, you know, it was all they focused, just turned the whole light back on us for whatever it was that we were suffering to come in there with. But yeah, just, I don't know. I don't know how to say, except that down to earth, real love of life in the midst of life, in the moment, I guess, as others have said before, Damien brought up. He lived in the moment, and that was the place that we got to be with him, in that emergent center. So that was kind of cool. Damien's back. I don't know, do you have something else for us to share, Damien?
You're muted, darling.
Yeah, he'll get it. I just let him know.
Mute. How about now?
You're good.
Now you can hear me?
Yes.
No, I mean, not, you know, there's so much, but I don't know. One simple thing he would say these things like Jeff said, the spiritual path. One time he said the spiritual path. He would often share these experiences of being with Baba or inner experiences, but then he would say it like, I'm sure many of you have, or all of you have had this kind of experience also. So he made it inclusive, that it was not that yes, he was very fortunate to meet Baba, but our path was not so different than his, is the way he would say it. And therefore, it was very encouraging that we were growing closer and closer to Baba. And Darwin's experience was not so different than our own, which gave you great hope and great encouragement. And I think one time he said, the spiritual path really is not that difficult. It's just like learning to play tennis. And we're like, what? And he said, like, well, when you first start playing tennis, you're not very good at it. But then just simply by continuing to play, you just naturally get better and better without even trying more. You just naturally, if you focus on the spiritual path, you naturally get better at it. So it's a natural evolution, the way he would put it. So it made it like, oh, I can do that. And he was so, I mean, his sense of humor was just unbelievably good. He would say things like, well, I'm a PhD. I said, Darwin, I thought you didn't even finish high school, because his family was moving around a lot. They would go to Florida for the winter, and he left when he was 17 and went out west. Darwin, I thought you didn't even finish high school. He said, no, that's true, but I'm a PhD. What do you mean? I'm a post-hole digger. Because when he was out there in the West working on ranches, he had to dig a lot of, put up a lot of fencing. So he did a lot of post-hole digging. And then one time he said, he would very rarely talk about his spiritual status, but one time he said, like, I was on the fourth plane with Baba. And what? Come on, Darwin, you never talked about that. Yep, I was on the fourth plane with Baba. It was from LA to San Francisco.
That's fun.
I think it was 56 when they traveled with Jeanne, and he traveled with Baba.
Yeah, John, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Damien, that just jogged my memory. Baba's gesture for Darwin was he would point to his ring finger, and that meant that Darwin was his gem.
Oh,
That was what Baba's gesture was for Darwin.
really?
And
Wow.
yeah, and so when I was growing up, you read or hear about the saints. I often wondered what it would be like to meet a saint and whether I'd ever have the opportunity to do that. And I certainly, have such a strong feeling that Darwin was it. Darwin was it.
Absolutely. And he was so unassuming, but if anything I could know what a saint is, he was so natural, but what a gem inside. We all felt that gemness. And it really came home when Isfandiar came for the second time here, and one time they were like in another league, the two of them together. It's like when you're whoever Darwin was, when you're at that level, there aren't too many people you can connect with. And he and Isfandiar were like two peas in a pod. And when they got together, it would like reverberate. the two of them together would reverberate. And one time they were together in Baba's house, and Asfandir was coming out of Baba's room. Darwin was going down the hall, and they met in the hallway and just held arm in arm together. And the whole house stopped. Nobody could move because we knew we were in the presence of these two souls that were so happy to be with each other, and we didn't want to move. We just all, in the whole house, you could feel the reverberation of them meeting in that hallway, and it went on for a good 2 or 3 minutes. And so he was so unassuming, it's hard to know who he really was, because but that's why I feel like he's growing in my heart. He's growing who he really is.
Beautiful. Damien, thank you. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Michal, Jai Baba.
Yeah. So, yeah, Jai Baba, these are beautiful stories. And those mandali with Baba were of a completely different class. And I always say that every Zoom about one of the mandali has the same flavor of that mandali. You can feel the flavor of the mandali coming through the Zoom. And it is feeling to me, like Darwin Shaw is putting his hand through to all of us here. Like he is there, like he's just coming through. So from wherever he is with Baba. So I met him only once when I was in Myrtle Beach once. The time that Kitty Devi passed away, I met him, and I met Jeanne, yeah, a few times at that time. Yeah, so, but I'm feeling him here, coming through. So like it's his attention is with us here, and it's it's coming through the planes, whatever whatever it is, so I feel the reach out. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you, Baba.
Thank you, Michal. I think you're absolutely on the money. And I feel what Damien is saying about how much bigger Darwin is as a conduit for Baba. Certainly in what the things that 10 or 11 or 12 people have shared. And also this whole Baba Zoom is full of effort and grace meetings, and full of people who have come forth and brought their lives and hearts with Baba into the context of the things that Darwin has talked about and brought forth for us. I mean, if I open an RT, it's the easiest thing in the world to open effort and grace on any page and start at any paragraph and read it. And everyone's like, yes, that's exactly what I was doing today. Thank God you brought it up. Oh my God, there's the answer. I see it. So, he keeps, I get it. I get that feeling of that expansion as well. Thank you, Baba, so much. We're so grateful. All right. Okay, Michal, go ahead. Do you want to wrap it up? Unless
No, you wrap it up. But I
no,
just
you had
wanted to
something.
say,
Go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm looking at the faces here of the people and that are participating and feeling what gathering and what a togetherness, because actually most of the times I don't know half the people. But here I had a personal meeting with most of the people here. So, and a heart meeting with those that I didn't meet personally. So it's interesting also that this Baba Zoom amazing thing that is bringing us together and forwarding us. And it's like Damien said about Darwin, what he said, what I have, you all have. You're all growing into that, and it's beautiful. So I'm just feeling this connection, so I had to share that. And so thank you, Baba. Thank you, Zoom, Baba Zoom. Thank you, Angela, for putting it up, and Baba for being. I feel Baba is Sahabas are constantly here. And thank you, Darwin, for bringing us together in this special Zoom. And thank you all for your beautiful shares. And see, I didn't want to wrap up. You are the one to wrap up.
Well, I think it was a beautiful, beautiful wrap up. Thank you, dear. And Damien, I just wanted to ask if you had something. Yes.
Just that Mikhail and I met. I went to Maribot very late in my Baba world, but 1988, and it was her first trip, my first trip, and we became friends, and we shared that journey together. We were a good friend. We were real support for each other that first trip, and then to top it all off, when I think both were leaving, or maybe when she was leaving, there was like a rainbow over Lower Maribod as she was leaving. So I don't know what that girl's got, but there's some goodness going on there. And I, Mikhail, you were saying that you didn't get to meet Darwin and Jeanne but once, but I feel like these souls, they don't die. Like Phyllis Frederick, I'm just getting to know her, never met her. These souls live on, and thankfully we have some films and writings, and so I feel like we're getting to know them, even if we didn't know them well during their lifetime.
I second that.
They live on.
I second that. I don't want to barge into this Darwin thing, but this thing that Damien was sharing about Rainbow, that was very, very special, and the friendship that we had at that time. So he was waiting for me, because it was my last day in Maribad at that time. So he took me to the train station, and there was this huge rainbow over there. PC, huge. Yeah.
How sweet. How very amazingly sweet. Yay. Damien, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, my joy. Wow.
Yeah, you brought so much of Darwin's spirit for us. I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I called Ann Ross, by the way. I know we got to go, but called Ann Ross, but she is at a women's retreat up in Lake Luzerne area where Darwin was born. Because Ann was family to them.
I see.
But no, she's with us in spirit in this whole thing.
Oh, cool. Next time I see her, I'm gonna tap that source. We're gonna talk about Darwin. All right, well, let's have a moment of silence. I just wanted, usually I show a picture of Baba, but this picture of Darwin is just so supreme. I'm going to use this as a moment of silence. Jai Baba. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar
Meher Baba Ki Jai.
Jai. Avatar
Avatar
Meher
Meher
Baba
Baba Ki Jai.
Jai. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
For us.
Thank you, Baba, for bringing your presence to this
Absolutely.
sacred space with